Welcome everybody to another Tech Talk by Audacia. This one is putting the CD into CI/CD. So that means CI/CD is continuous integration, continuous deployment. So yes, putting the continuous deployment back into CI/CD. So my name is Luke Mitchell. I'm one of the principal software engineers here at Audacia. And I had to do this about me page. So I also put that with a problem solver and intuitive. Makes me look, I don't know, makes me look cool, I guess. Those are the only things I could think of last night when I was doing this page. So what we're going to go over today is trunk-based development and Gitflow. These are two strategies that you can use when doing software development. And then we're going to do CI/CD practices, obviously, because that's what the title of the talk is. I'm going to go over ephemeral environments as well. So maybe some of you haven't got used ephemeral environments before. It's just a fancy way of saying temporary environments. So through the development cycle, you can create ephemeral environments in order to have environments just for like per ticket per developer to be able to do the testing on stuff like that. And then we're going to talk about release strategies as well. What release strategies you can use for trunk-based development and what release strategies you can use for Gitflow as well. So yeah, we'll get into this one. So in terms of trunk-based development and how it differs from Gitflow, we have a branch called main branch, and that is equivalent to your dev branch in Gitflow. And the main branch should always be in a deployable state, whereas in Gitflow, you can push stuff into main before it's gone through a QA process and stuff like that. In trunk-based development, you always want the QA process to have happened before anything is merged into main. We really focus on short-lived branches with a few small commits as well. This helps keep the focus on one area of development, also helps to speed up the development process as well. We don't have any long-lived feature branches, so yeah, short-lived branches that are able to be pushed through the environments and get across the board and get out into production as quickly as possible. And then with small commits as well. So the small commits makes code reviews a lot more efficient and makes it a lot easier and simpler for devs who are doing the code reviews as well. So the user story flow, it's quite nice to obviously show a diagram for this. So we'll start on the left-hand side and work our way across. So when a developer first picks up a user story, I've written PBI there. That's because we use that terminology within Audacia because we use Azure DevOps, and we call so we have PBIs, which is a product backlog item, but it's just a user story if you use the Jira or anything like that. So yeah, when we pick up a ticket, what we'll do is create a branch locally and then push that branch up to source control. What will that will then do is it'll kick off a pipeline to create an ephemeral environment within whichever cloud environment that you're going to be using. Cloud provider we use mainly Audacia is Azure. So it'll create all the infrastructure and deploy all the code as well as an ephemeral environment. So then as we're doing the development work, we can keep pushing up the changes. And what we can do then, we're able to test those changes in isolation, and where that helps instead of having like a shared development environment where everybody's obviously testing. So if you're able to test in isolation, you know, if obviously you find a bug, anything like that, it's only to do with your code, and it's not to do with another developer's code. So once a developer is happy that they have they've done all the development and satisfied the AC within the ticket they've got, they can open a PR. That PR then obviously is passed over to other developers to be able to be reviewed. Once that review process has gone through and it's been approved, it then gets passed over to the testers to go through QA. So once that happens, then the ephemeral environment that the dev was using now becomes your QA environment. So within using QA ephemeral environments in this trunk-based strategy, we actually don't have a static QA environment. It's always the QA environments are always dependent on the ticket that's being worked on, all the tickets that are being worked on. And again, the good thing about that is any testing and stuff like that is being done. If you find a bug or something like that, you know it's only to do with the development work that's gone on with that ticket. Helps you be able to pick up bugs early as well, because if a tester picks up a bug here, it can then be passed straight back to the dev who had done the development on it. They're able to then make those changes, push it up to their ephemeral environment within Azure, and then pass it back over to the tester to be able to test that and see if that's been fixed. So once the QA has passed that and they're all happy with it, what happens then? We merge that code to main, and then that will kick off another automatic pipeline, which then just removes the ephemeral environment, so you don't have all these environments hanging around that aren't needed anymore. That obviously helps with like costing and stuff like that in terms of obviously your billing cycle and not having too many environments just hanging around that aren't fit for purpose anymore. It also kicks off another pipeline to create a release candidate branch. These release candidate branches are then what we release out to UAT for any UAT testing that needs to be done. Not all of them will always be pushed out to UAT. You may have it where you have maybe 3 or 4 tickets that are created, and the last release branch that is created off of that will then be pushed out to UAT to then ship all the code from each of the branches. Just in case, I guess that's if it made sense to have them all together. If you're doing maybe like a CRUD process or something like that on an API for a database table, it might make more sense just to ship it all at once and push it into UAT. Once obviously all the UAT and stuff like that is done successfully, that can then that release candidate branch can then be pushed out to production. Now, it's not normally the practice of having a production branch within trunk-based development. However, I like to have a production branch because it always gives me a snapshot of what's in production and what's actually working in production. This means that if I need to do any hot fixes or anything like that, or I need to roll back, I've got a branch there that I can do it from. So if I were to push out a release candidate branch into prod, and then we find a bug straight away from any little bits of testing that we're doing, instead of having to try and cherry pick and stuff like that, or making a hot fix, I could just push the prod branch straight back out to production because I know that's a point which is working at the last point in time. There is also another strategy as well. So once the release candidate branch gets merged into prod after it's been released to the prod environment, you can create a rollback candidate branch as well, and that again, it just gives you a snapshot at the moment in time. So the way that you do that is you open up a pull request. As soon as you open up that pull request, it kicks off a pipeline to create the rollback candidate branch before anything goes into production, into your production branch. So you've got the snapshot of production when it was last working and it was bug free. So if you do need to obviously roll it back after you've done the merge into there, it can just make it a little bit easier. I guess it just depends on how you want to work as a team as to whether you want to do that or not. So moving on. I guess the whole theory behind this is really just getting little and often production releases in order to reduce the risk. Now, I know some people feel like releasing all the time can produce quite a lot of risk, but I'm of the opposite thought, really. I think if you're releasing just like 1 ticket, 2 tickets at a time, and anything goes wrong, it's a lot easier to try and find out where something's gone wrong and pinpoint that bug, because that work has just been worked on right there and then, instead of releasing a full sprint or releasing on a monthly basis or like a quarterly basis and something like that, where you've got a lot of work that's been worked on. A lot of that work that's been worked on as well has probably been forgotten about by the developers at the moment in time. Then you come to try to fix a bug. So getting that out early, it helps with obviously risk mitigation there. You also get early client and user feedback as well. So in terms of UIs and stuff, I know users and clients can be quite notorious for not really knowing what they want until you put something in front of them. So if you start to develop it and get it out there early, you can obviously ask for user feedback or get your client feedback to say, is this what you want? No, okay, we can make some slight changes here and obviously reprioritize the board and with that as well. and then it means you can be reactive to change as well. I mean, the last point as well, releasing full sprints and multiple sprints, it's just my opinion that it's a bit of a hangover of waterfall, where obviously you just release an entire project all at once, which we know that the pitfalls of that now anyway. That's why we not really do sprints and agile. And then prioritization. So yeah, I did briefly mention this. So in terms of like code reviews and stuff like that, I said they should be performed synchronously. It's not quite like synchronous, but the idea behind it is as soon as a PR is raised, that should start to be reviewed within like 10 to 15 minutes. So a developer who creates a pull request, if they've not seen somebody's come to pick it up, need to get onto the other developers in the team and say, right, who's going to pick this up? Who's going to get onto this? Because there's nothing more important really than getting that pull request approved to be able to get that then into QA and tested and get that across the board for the continuous deployment strategy that we'll want to get towards. I mean, unless you have a critical bug that needs to be worked on for production, it should always be prioritized in terms of like, whatever PRs are open and then whatever you're working on as well. Okay. And then in terms of the PR process, automated testing, as I'm sure most of you will be doing anyway in terms of your development cycle. So get unit testing, integration testing, and UI testing that you want. Just have that quality gate there to make sure so anybody who comes to obviously pick it up aren't going to start to review code that's actually already broken anyway, and you should just pass back to the developer because the tests are quite working, or it's not building properly. And then once that code review has been performed, getting the QA testing done whilst the PR is open and approved, and then it's down to the tester who has done that and passed that QA on the ticket to then merge that into main and then start getting that across the board into UAT. Releases and rollbacks. So I mentioned, creating release candidate branches upon PR completion. It's always worked really well for me as this, and then tagging it with the date time as well. As I mentioned before, you may be putting more than one ticket in, releasing more than one ticket into UAT. So you just get the one with obviously the most recent date and time, which have the most amount of code in to then be able to release that out. Also mentioned obviously having a production branch as well, which helps to monitor what's out in production at the moment, as opposed to obviously what you're getting flowing through UAT. And obviously what's in compared to what's in main as well, because obviously main will be changing at a rapid pace as well compared to what production will be. So always having that point in time of what's actually there in production and what's working compared to everything else. And then the rollback candidate branches is just something that I have used in the past. I don't use them all the time, but they can be handy. It's just, I guess it's just a balancing act of, do you want all those branches being created to then do like the cleanup on them and stuff as well. And then you can also use feature flags as well, which has worked out really well in the past on past projects that I've used for obviously code that's getting pushed out and stuff as well. But you don't really want all users to sometimes you don't want any of the users to be using it at the moment, or you just want a subset of users to be using it. So you can use feature flags as well to help that process on your releases. And then I guess this way of working really helps to push continuous communication between the devs and the testers through things like Teams or Slack, and also within ADO, which is Azure DevOps, which is, if you don't know what Azure DevOps is, it's kind of like the integration of GitHub and Jira combined, where you have all your source code there, but you also have all your sprint boards and stuff there as well, as you're able to communicate through the tickets on your sprint board. It also lends really well to having your communication between your PR or your product owner, your lead dev and your client, again with that early feedback loop of getting things out there into UAT and into production, to see, is this what you imagined, is this what you wanted, and if not, then what can we change and make better in terms of obviously a smaller release cycle, instead of months down the line then deciding, that's not quite what we wanted and we're going to have to redo a few sprints worth of work. And then finally, I feel like it's a bit of a culture change for a lot of places to try and take this on board, because it really is down to trust, trusting that your dev team will put those quality gates in place and will have those PR processes in place to allow the rest of the business to, I guess, be confident in having those continuous deployments and not having as much, I guess, oversight and a continual oversight of seeing what's going out and being pushed out on a continual basis. I know some places before, early in my career, I used to have to go into like CAB meetings, which are called change advisory board meetings. We just have to like go through and justify each and every little change and stuff that you were obviously going to be pushing through into like UAT or into production, which I can see why that is there and why I guess some companies would want it at times, but it really does slow down your productions, your release cycle. So it's kind of like, for me, it feels like a bit too much bureaucracy at times. So that's why I like to go with this. And then again, it's about getting full team ownership as well. So down from like the junior developer up to like the lead developer, making sure that anything that is released out and pushed out, you all have full ownership of it, because you don't want to be the one who creates a bug and breaks things in production. Okay, that's me. So I'm going to now hand over to my colleague Akeel Ahmed, and he's going to go over the next part of Gitflow.
Thank you very much, Luke. So just before I go into Gitflow, a little brief introduction for myself. My name is Akeel Ahmed, and I am also a principal software engineer at Audacia. I like to class myself as a calm individual, and I highly focus on building teams that can tackle any challenge. So with that brief overview done, let's get into Gitflow development with static environments. So not every team, not every business can afford temporary environments, or they don't have necessarily that setup. So what do you do, or how do you utilize your static environments to deliver functionality as quickly as possible to the client? So we can use Gitflow combined with some release strategies to deliver or reduce your release cadence, and then deliver the functionality to your stakeholders as soon as possible. So Gitflow dictates a couple of things, so let's just go over those. So firstly, main is updated only with stable and tested releases. So that means your main branch is being merged by your release branches, which is fully tested through QA UAT cycle. And it's mainly because then you want to have that live reflection or production reflection in your code base in the shape of your main branch. Second, feature branches will exist, but they can be short-lived, and that's going to be tied with your continuous integration implementation as to when a feature branch gets opened up. Obviously, developers work in a feature branch, how quickly can that be merged into your development branch? So they can be short-lived as well. Number three, structured release process controls the deployment. So this is very important, and I think that's become that's all tied down to your release management process, and how do you shift your releases from an environment to an environment. So this needs to be really structured. Number four, which is commits can still be small and incremental. This can be controlled how you plan your releases upfront. So i.e. batching smaller user stories into your releases so that it can be delivered a lot more rapidly and in small incrementals. Additionally, you can use feature flags to control the functionality in production environments. So here is a user story flow. Now this is slightly combined with your release planning and release management strategies as well. So we start from the left-hand side where you assign your user stories to releases. And this can be done by just tagging a user story with a release tag, i.e. release number 1, 2, and 3. And this all exercise is your release planning phase. And then once a release becomes into the dev scope or lands into the dev scope, developers will start picking up the user stories and start merging those changes into your develop branch through continuous integration. And utilizing continuous deployment, you can deploy those changes straight into an environment. It could be a dev environment or QA environment. In my case, obviously, we've got a QA environment where the cycle, where the user stories are being tested by the QAs. So once a full release is fully developed and feature ready and is QA tested, we take a release cut, as in a release branch. This will become your release candidate branch, and then that gets deployed into UAT environment where UAT will happen. Once the UAT is passed, we push that release same branch into production environment, and at the same time, we merge that change into main just to reflect the live reflection of what's happening in production in a singular branch, because your developer branch will be continuously getting changes. So post develop branch onwards to production, it's your release management cycle. Right, Gitflow promotes a clear, organized branching model that ensures the stability of the main code base. By utilizing specific branches for development, releases, and hotfixes, team can isolate the changes and ensure that the main branch remains stable always. This structure reduces the risk of basically introducing unstable code into your production cycle. Gitflow also dictates or has the dedicated release and hotfix branches, enabling teams to plan and manage and track releases effectively. This organized approach ensures basically that each version is fully tested before being deployed, and also reduces the risk of unexpected bugs in production environments. Versioning is very important, and it's also transparent, and it allows teams to handle release cycles with precision as well. Gitflow enhances the collaboration by providing clear structure that all the team members can follow. Each developer knows where to branch and how their work integrates with the broader team. The visibility of the process through different branches like development and releases ensures everyone understands the state of each feature or bug fix at a given time. And this in turn improves the communication and reduces miscommunication. Now, to have a successful Gitflow strategy in place, I think two things are very key and important, which should be prioritized. One is the release planning, and one is the release management. So let's just talk about release planning. So release planning is where you define feature scope and identify what goes into each branch upfront in the process, just like I demonstrated in the flow diagram we saw earlier on. And it creates you only create a dedicated release branch once the development of that whole release is done and it's feature complete. And also what you can do is you can conduct the QA, UAT, and stakeholder alignment before obviously finalizing a release as well. In terms of release management, we need to make sure no new features get added into the into the release branch. So once a release cut has been taken, we make sure we don't carry on adding more new features onto it. It's only open for bug fixes or just minor refinements within that feature itself. So that needs to be taken into consideration. We can use release taggings for clear tracking of user stories on the board, and also through obviously the PRs as well. Basically, your release tagging become the gatekeepers as to what goes into which branch. Whilst handling hotfixes effectively, we can patch the production without disrupting obviously ongoing development, and you can achieve this by having a major minor release structure, where say for instance if the production release was on release 1 and we found a bug, we can then create a hotfix branch, hotfix release branch off of it, which is 1.1, and then we can deploy that into production and also merge it back into development so that everything is lined up. When Gitflow is combined with continuous integration and continuous deployment, it just doesn't bring the technical discipline within the team. It also empowers your product owners and your project managers with real and hands-on control over releases, and also visibility and predictability as well. So with continuous deployment, releases happen automatically from your developer or release branches, but only when the deployment is approved. So this puts the go live button basically in the hands of your product owners, product managers, and not just the developers. So they can be heavily involved into this deployment of a release cycle. Feature flags plus the continuous deployment lets you deploy the feature without making them visible. So product owners can gradually, incrementally release the functionality or maybe just delay the launch without any engineering changes involved in it. Gitflow allows quick creation of hotfix branches of production bugs, and continuous deployment deploys them immediately, and then you can merge them back into your main and develop, keeping everything aligned up as well. Lastly, every merge, tag, and deployment is logged, so product owners, product managers can trace exactly what is in a release, who approved it, and when it was deployed, and it is perfect for accountability and planning. Right. Lastly, there's a couple of slides which are just going to compare the trunk-based development versus Gitflow. So we're just going to go through some of the main differences between the two strategies. So within trunk-based, obviously the developers work directly on the main branch with short-lived feature branches that are merged back quickly. Whereas in Gitflow, uses long-lived branches like develop, master, release branch, hotfix branch, and feature branch as well. It's more structured and hierarchical kind of deployment structure. Secondly, continuous integration and frequent releases, which is ideal for your CI/CD pipeline setup. Whereas in Gitflow, obviously you've got a structured release cycle, often better suited for like traditional, less frequent release models, but you can improve your release management process to shorten that release cadence as well. Simpler branching, but requires strong testing, code reviews, and discipline to avoid breaking changes within trunk-based development. So just like my colleague said, obviously you have to have that culture and that setup in place to make sure everything that gets pushed up the environments is fully tested and it's fully code reviewed as well, so we don't end up kind of pushing a breaking change into production environment. Whereas in Gitflow, it's a little bit more complex, but it provides more clear isolation of features, fixes, and releases, which can help in a larger team setup. So if you've got quite a lot of people working on a similar code base, it's always helpful, to have that structure in place, to control the changes going into the production cycle. Lastly, I just want to wrap everything up in an analogy, which probably some people can relate to as well, and it makes things obviously help people understand quite the difference between the trunk-based development and Gitflow. So imagine your user stories are passengers. So within trunk-based development, you load up a passenger in a taxi, and only one passenger is loaded up, and that's your release. And then that taxi goes to QA, UAT, and production, stops, and gets to the final destination. Whereas in Gitflow, you have a larger release, which is here depicted as a bus. You load up multiple passengers in there, and then the whole bus travels through different bus stops of QA, UAT, and production. Now, we have to be really careful within trunk-based development. If you don't have the proper checks in place, you could end up transporting a passenger which is not approved all the way to the destination into prod, which could lead into breakage in production environment. And the other side of Gitflow, the problem is if one of the passenger fails the check, that bus is going to stop in that bus stop. Basically, it's not going to move up until that check has been passed, and it could produce some backlog into previous bus stops as well. So that's what we had all today. We are going to head into our Q&A session, but just before we do this, I just would like to announce the next tech talk is titled Policies, Principle, People, the Building Blocks of AI Governance. It is going to happen on Thursday, 22nd of May at same time, 12:30 p.m. It's going to be delivered by Chris Bentley, who is our senior data scientist, and Ryan Crompton, who is our principal software consultant. So we're just going to move on to questions now. I think we've got one question from Richard, and it says, how do we deal with multiple release branches within temporary environment setup? So I'll pass it on to Luke to answer that question.
Okay. Yeah, cheers, Akeel. Yes, that's a really good question in terms of what I was saying before. Each time you do a merge into main, You'll then create a release candidate branch, obviously keeping all that in check, because the setup is once you open up a pull request into production, that branch will then be deleted, but then you obviously got all your other branches as well. So periodically, maybe on like a weekly basis or the end of every sprint, so every sprint cycle, so maybe on a fortnightly basis, it's just good to go into Azure DevOps or wherever your source code is, maybe GitHub or something like that, and just delete down the old branches that are no longer needed. Obviously, having that date time format will help you be able to see that which ones need to be cleared down. That's the same as well if you've got like your release candidate, your rollback candidate branches as well. On a periodical cycle, a fortnightly cycle, just get rid of the ones that will no longer be needed, just to make sure it's all kept nice and tidy. Cool. I don't think there are any more questions there, so we'll leave it there. Thanks everyone for joining. Hope to see you again at the next one.